Whoa, technology.
Oh, God, that felt good. Yeah.
Drop it.
Yeah, lemons.
Totes, malotes, dog.
Welcome to the Safety Doc Podcast with author, radio host, and nationally recognized safety expert, Dr. David Perrodin. Join us each week as we discuss the best and most bizarre practices in safety preparation and crisis response. Follow Dr. Perrodin on Twitter at SafetyPhD. And remember, the truth will keep you safe.
Hey everybody, this is the Safety Doc, Dr. David Perrodin from down here in the North Star Recording Studio. And guess what, folks? Winter might be behind us. It is actually, believe it or not, 62 degrees down here, so quite a bit warmer than usual. And it's actually pretty warm outside today. So yeah, we might have turned the corner as far as the weather, but we're not turning the corner as far as the craziness going on with the coronavirus. So one of the most popular shows for the Safety Doc podcast was when we had our good friend Nick Schulaner on to talk about marketing and school safety and perspectives of somebody who had graduated high school not too long ago, giving us that inside view. But today we're bringing back Nick because Nick is a university student, engineering, marketing, but was attending a campus that had a rapid closure of in-person classes, other activities, people getting out of dorms and all of that because coronavirus, right? A lot of stuff was shut down. So we're going to get the take from Nick. What was that like? And then how he obtained face validity of what's going on around him as all these emails are coming out of here's, what we're seeing, here's what we're hearing on the media. And then some really spot on advice for people, things that you can do now to better prepare for, let's say you return in fall to the university and there's another wave of coronavirus or another pandemic and things get shut down. He's going to give you some tips, things I didn't think about that actually I'm heeding that advice. I'm taking that. You're going to want that. But welcome to the show, Nick Schulaner.
All right. Thanks, Doc. And it's good to be back.
So Nick, let's just start out. How are you right now? How are things going for you?
So far, things are actually going pretty good. I'm still in my college town. Like my campus is, just about a mile or so that way. But yeah, things are going pretty good because I'm in Eastern Washington State. So far, back when they first announced this school was shutting down, there was a bit of panic and a lot of people were trying to leave at once. But since those guys have gone back to wherever they normally live, things have mostly quieted down. Of course, because of the governor's restrictions, most of the restaurants and whatnot are still closed.
Oh, right. So let's take it kind of from the top. When was the moment when you learned, hey, the campus is basically shutting down for in-person? I know they've transitioned to virtual learning, but tell me about the moment and then I guess how you processed through it, friends of yours, as you talk to other people, family, things like that. Work us through how you dealt with chaos, how you negotiated with chaos.
All right. So I kind of figured this was coming because I go to Washington State University. And so that's one of the big universities in Washington. The other one, the University of Washington on the other side of the state, they announced that they were closing down, mostly because of a lot of the stuff that the governor was doing to try to, stop the virus from spreading. So I already saw this coming because, as you've said, what a lot of schools do is they'll look at what other schools are doing and do that. So once I heard that UW was shutting down, I figured Wazoo wasn't that far behind. And they made the official announcement. Well, I guess now it would be 2 weeks ago, but it was the Wednesday before we were all supposed to go on spring break.
Okay.
So at the time, that was it. They just said, hey, we're closing down campus for in-person. All our classes are going to be online after spring break. Just pretty much plan accordingly. They gave us more information later over the course of the next few weeks, but then yeah, that was all we had to go off for the first day or so. But it wasn't particularly surprising.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so you'd seen it kind of unfolding in other areas. Anybody kind of this mass exit, people trying to grab everything, every box that they can get. Any panic, even some professors maybe saying, we're not sure how we're going to do this. Stay tuned.
I got a lot of emails from my professors that all pretty much said the same thing, which makes me wonder if they were just, copy and pasting a
Sure.
template. They basically said, as you've heard, our in-person classes are going to be shut down. So I'm going to spend spring break figuring out how to move the class to online. Most of them went with Zoom, which is what we're using now. But yeah, it's like, it's going to take us a little while to just figure this out. And even as late as like the Friday before spring break ended, I still got emails from a few professors saying, I'm still not quite sure. I still haven't quite figured this all out. Stay tuned. That pretty much happened until like the first day classes started back up again and they were online.
Were any of your classes online before this semester, or were they all face-to-face?
This particular semester, they were all face-to-face, but
Okay.
a lot of them had an online component, like turning in assignments online.
And that's kind of what I found too. So when courses are offered now, usually there's an online component, even if it's a face-to-face course. But yeah, for a professor to switch midstream, that's a pretty big thing, especially if you're teaching 5 or 6 classes, and how's this going to work? Tell me, who are the people you interacted with who you kind of sensed were maybe the most anxious or the most panicked? I mean, was it some friends? Was it family wondering if you're going to be okay? Was it, professors? Just anyone else? I mean, who are the people because you're very perceptive, situational awareness, and you're thinking, they're having a really hard time processing what's happening. And it wasn't only this, right, Nick? It was at that time, the NBA shutting down, the NCAA, I mean, Disney shutting down, all these things are kind of happening around people. So what was your observation of, people who handled, I guess, this, thought through it, inventory their options, and maybe some people you encountered who it really was almost something they weren't ready to even process, deal with?
Well, most of my fellow students, just from what I observed, we seemed just a little bit anxious, just in the sense that we were just packing up stuff we can to go back to what for most students is the west side of Washington, because that's where most students at Wazoo were originally from. But the two types of people that I realized were really anxious are, one, older professors, because they got to figure out how to use Zoom and how to store the lectures and whatnot, but also people in charge of labs, like the university's lab director and my TA for my physics lab. Because, for the most part, a lot of classes could be done online anyway. We just haven't done it until now.
Great point, Nick.
But labs are one of the things that actually really do need to be done in person for the most part. And so at least with the other professors, they just had to figure out, how to record and store the lectures so people can watch them later. But for something like the lab that depends on you actually being there, they basically had to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what I've heard also is anything that's lab-based, whether now because right, I mean, it's not like, here, Nick, we're going to ship you a Bunsen burner, and an arc welder at home and some other stuff. So like, here's how to follow it. But, they're having to set up and record step by step, different experiments, different things. And even with that, how authentic, I mean, but you're right. People are innovating. You mentioned, how about, when you went to stores, things like that, did you see shelves cleared out? Did you see lines, anything of that nature where people were trying to get as much as they could?
Surprisingly, things are actually pretty tame up here. So Pullman has 3 main grocery stores. There's a Walmart, there's a Safeway, and then Dismore's. Dismore's is like a really local one. That's where I do most of my shopping. Pretty much all of them ran out of toilet paper
Right.
within a few days. Other than that, they're mostly fully stocked, especially Dismore's. Like I went there on, because today's Thursday. I went there on Sunday. You know, they weren't out of a bunch of stuff, but they were, you know, their supplies were running thin. But what I realized later, because I just went back on Tuesday, it wasn't because of the whole pandemic. It was just because Sunday is the last day before they get their truck.
Gotcha.
So when I went there on Tuesday, everything was fine. But yeah, with the exception of toilet paper, you know, we aren't really out of anything. I've been able to get everything I need, like you know, food and whatnot. I can't say the same for people on the west side of Washington, because my mom still lives on the western side of Washington, and she told me the local grocery stores there, where she does all her shopping, a lot of their shelves were empty for a little while until they restocked. And even then, she notices that they're running, like they can restock, but they're running out quicker than they usually do.
Yeah. So let's build off of that. So what you're talking about is face validity. So face validity is this concept of, you know, you get out in your environment, observe what's going on at the grocery store, you know, how much traffic there is, people at the parks. I mean, all of these things, just you take inventory, like you're observing. I get out, I'm doing the same thing, doing it on a regular basis. I was out yesterday, took a little video with the camcorder, trying to do some kind of, you know, every 4 or 5 days to see what's changed. And then, you know, I have friends all across the country, New York, Houston, California. And so they're doing the same thing. We can kind of keep track of what's changed and what hasn't changed, or what's improved. But one of the things too is some areas at grocery stores, even if they do get restocked, things are out like right away. And I thought there'd be a saturation point with that at some point. Like, you know, you can only buy and stock so many cans of soup and whatever before you're like, okay, this is enough. And then, but it doesn't seem like we're there yet. And then, so tell me about face validity. So you said you're talking with your mom. Who else have you talked to for face validity? And then maybe what did you do for your own face validity, you know, right after this happened with the university, you know, closing, getting out, seeing what's happening? I know you just shared, you did this recently. I think in the last day or two, you went out and you did face validity. And for the people listening, to understand face validity, if you're only tuning into the news, if you are only listening to people who get their main source from the news, it usually is significantly different than actually what's happening around you. I'm not trying to minimize to say that things aren't as intense as what the news is portraying, but the news is very specific to a region, and it's a short amount of time, you know, that they have to get stories in and stuff like that. So I think it's much better to do this face validity. So tell me about your face validity process, what you learned, what you'd recommend to other people on conducting face validity.
Well, when I learned what face validity was, I realized how simple it actually was. Like, you know, our friend Aaron Clary, what he mentioned is that he goes and checks the grocery stores like every day. I pretty much do that, but instead of every day, it's every other day, something like that. But
Right.
It's really as simple as just, you know, walking around your neighborhood or campus, or, you know, just local areas, see what's going on.
Yeah.
There's this one business that is not too far that way from where my apartment is. And, you know, I think they mentioned that most people would be working from home, but funny enough, if you walk by, you still see a decent amount of cars in the parking lot. So
Okay.
with the exception of like the schools and the restaurants being shut down, very little has actually changed. I mean, obviously the campus is pretty much deserted except for a few restaurants that offer takeout, but
Right.
yeah, that's what I basically do. And I have some friends in different parts of the world. I have some friends that are on the Western Washington. I have a lot of friends in New York, my digital marketing friends. I mostly just ask them, like, what's going on? Like, I have one friend that's in New Rochelle, which is where
Yeah.
they were, like, actually quarantined and whatnot. So guys, it's really just as simple as asking other people what's going on in their neck of the woods.
So I want to come back to that from a marketing perspective in just a second, but let's just pause right now. So tell people about the work that you do, how they can learn about how you can benefit them with marketing, more about your content. So let's take a break so you can share that with people.
All right. So as Doc said, I am a digital marketer, and my line of work is I'm basically a digital marketer for hire. I do freelance work. Companies hire me to manage. I specialize in paid ads, so companies hire me to just manage their paid ads. This is things like Google ads, Facebook ads. I've done a little bit of Amazon, but not as much as Google and Facebook. I occasionally do some other areas of digital marketing, but my main focus is paid ads.
Okay.
And if you want to learn more about that, you can find my stuff at nickschulaner.com. That's Nick spelled the usual way, and then my last name is Schulaner.
Awesome. And I'll put that out also in the show notes. So Nick, let's come back to this. One of the things we're seeing is companies shutting down. As you said, the restaurants that are still open are doing takeout and things like that. So it seems like the knee-jerk reaction, if I have a business, right, is I need to cut back on as many expenses as I can. Like I've got to cut back on advertising and other, whatever, because I don't have as much income. People aren't coming to the store. We've had the mandatory closures. But from a marketing perspective, so I thought about this for quite a while, and I think I'd run this by you. So that's counterintuitive. That might not make much sense because you want people to still remember you, to keep your name, your business relevant. And when this does end, when we do have a lifting of restrictions and things like that, people need to be able to quickly, ramp up their businesses and make their clients aware. So how do you recommend right now for people, any business, how they approach advertising? Let's just say it's a smaller business, maybe 1 to 5 employees, or most businesses are kind of smaller businesses. What are some ways that they can do advertising that is going to not break their budget and make sure that they stay relevant at a time when maybe their business is determined to be non-essential and it's been shut down?
Thank you for tuning in to the Safety Doc Podcast with the nation's leading safety expert, Dr. David Perrodin, author, radio show host, university instructor, researcher, expert witness, and consultant. Powerful testimonials. Dr. Perrodin has a strong reputation as the go-to safety consultant, and he was still able to exceed our expectations. When we went looking for an expert in the field of crisis preparedness and prevention, David was the single person we pursued. Not easy stepping into the touchier subjects of life, but Dr. David pulls it off. Take a listen. Now, back to Dr. David Perrodin and the Safety Doc Podcast.
Well, the thing you gotta understand, Doc, is a lot of this depends on the specific business. Like a perfect example, one of my clients is basically a high-end barbershop in the LA area. I've been helping them with their Google ads. And, once I heard that California was doing all these restrictions, I reached out to basically the owner. I was like, hey, would you like me to shut down the ads? Because I saw barbershops were one of those things that were required to be shut down. And she's like, yeah, we're going to have to shut down the ads. So in a situation like that, if you have like a brick and mortar business that has an actual store and actually depends on a physical location, there really isn't that much you can do, because it doesn't matter how good the marketing is. I can't get results for that barbershop if that barbershop isn't legally allowed to operate.
Right. You don't want to do some great ad and then they're like, okay, this is where we're going. And you go there and it's closed. Right. So you're right. So
Funny story. I've heard of a few barbershops are actually technically still open. Like they put on they put like, cloth or, blinds on the windows so it looks like they're closed. But really secretly, they just reach out. They just send it to the email list. Hey, like keep this on the down low, but we're still open if you need a haircut. But even then, it doesn't change the problem, because if I did run a Google ad for that barber shop right now, it would immediately give away the fact that they're still open.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, and that underground kind of economy is going to happen. It's kind of funny because I got to get a haircut before long here, but so okay. So Nick, they say we need to shut this down. We can't advertise because people can't come into the business. So what advice do you give them, and also to make sure that you retain them as a client? Because again, maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks from now, the restrictions are lifted. They're going to want their customers back in. So I guess people, what's your advice to to them, to other people, of how to stay relevant and to make sure people don't forget about their services, that they don't maybe find competitors, that they it's kind of like like we're all going to be great at cutting our own hair here in about a month, right? Like, all of our family members, or if we have a mirror, I mean, it's a skill we're probably going to acquire. But yeah, so how do you answer that question? They come to you and say, we just don't want to be forgotten. We want to make sure, what are ways, can they send out little messages, just that aren't advertising, but just, some update or reminder, or I mean, what do you think?
Well, keep in mind, all of this is for local businesses. For like online businesses, I'll get to those in a second. But for local businesses, especially the ones like, the barbershop that is legally required to close, mostly maybe just don't overdo it. Just send one message like, hey, we have to shut down. We can't wait to see you guys when it opens again. But what the people working for these businesses doing their marketing can do is they can level up their skills. Like, I'm taking this SEO course right now, which is, I know a little bit about it, but it's not the field of marketing I specialize in. And so when the restrictions get lifted, I'll be able to help them with the SEO, even though I've mostly been focusing on their paid ads. So that is something marketers could do. But basically, if you're the owner of a brick and mortar business like a barber shop that is legally required to shut down, there is not much else you can do. Same deal with a lot of the physical businesses, or things that are generally going to slow. Because I have a client in your neck of the woods as well.
Okay.
The business I'm helping them with is kind of like a side hustle type of thing. And, they both have day jobs. One of them, they are pretty sure was going to lay off because he works in construction. So I'm like, yeah, that's going to, even though like if you're a wedding photographer, you could technically still book weddings because, a lot of times you book it like a year or so in advance.
Sure.
But even then it's like, funny enough, I'll tie this back to something you mentioned in School of Errors. Use your discretion and common sense, like in the vast majority of cases. And that's all for now. That is all for, physical businesses like brick and mortar businesses. For online businesses, it's a little bit different because a lot of the online businesses, a lot of them aren't legally required to close. And sometimes you might actually benefit from doubling down on your marketing right now. Like a perfect example, I have this one client that basically sells electronic software that you can use for your guitars and and keyboards and whatnot. And most of their stuff costs like, 20 to sometimes $50, but it's stuff people can do even when they're required to stay at home.
Yeah.
In fact, right now, the campaigns I'm running for them are doing really well and I even mentioned this when I met with them a little while ago. It's like, yeah, people are bored in quarantine, so they're just searching for stuff to do. And if you play guitar or keyboard like I do, you can just say, okay, maybe I'll just get some new sounds. So like we set a new record actually for the month of March for like just the raw sales that we did.
Oh, that's amazing.
People are, so bored. So really you're going to want to think like, is this something people can buy, if they're bored, or something people can still benefit from, even if they're forced to stay at home? Obviously a barbershop doesn't apply because it's a physical business.
Right.
But if you're selling like, a book or a flash drive or stuff like that, for the most part, you can still operate. And if you determine that it makes sense that your business can still operate,
Yeah.
you can actually get the ad space is a lot cheaper than it normally is because, yeah, like you said, a lot of the physical businesses or businesses that were scared of this whole pandemic, a lot of them shut down their ads. And so there aren't as many people advertising on Facebook and Google right now as there usually is, which means that it doesn't cost as much to do it because it's not as competitive.
Yeah, Nick, I never thought of that. That's a great point. So yeah, anyone who is thinking of doing those types of ads, because people aren't going away from, Facebook and Google and, whatever. They're still there, but you're right. I mean, the volume of ads definitely would go down because a number of these places simply aren't available to do business under the decree. So yeah, I mean, that's wow. I mean, thanks for sharing that because I totally didn't think about that.
Yeah, to give you an idea of how good this can actually be, I had this new campaign that I was working on for that music software client. It went from 50% of the way towards being profitable to almost I think it's right now it's a 2.5 times ROI. It went from losing money to making quite a bit of money in a day.
That's incredible.
And I've seen campaigns go from not profitable to profitable, but not that fast.
Right.
And granted, I've been doing this for about 2 years. So I haven't seen everything, but I doubt that happens very much.
Oh my goodness, man, that's amazing. That's amazing. So I'm gonna go back to coronavirus, impacting your campus, and you decided to stay in your apartment, which is located, about a mile from campus instead of leaving. So tell me about the process where you said, I'm going to stay here versus, getting out and going somewhere else.
Well, funny story about that, because they announced that they were officially shutting down the campus right before spring break. And Initially, I had planned to spend spring break in Hawaii, which is actually where I was born and where my dad is. So I really wanted to go there, but one I realized the flight might get canceled because Hawaii is probably more susceptible than most states to a pandemic like this. But what I also realized is, there were these travel restrictions, which it makes sense to do because if you're trying to keep something from spreading, the last thing you want to do is just make it so people can fly anywhere they want.
Right.
And so that's something even my dad and I even talked about. It's even if I am able to get to Hawaii, I might not be able to get back here, which could be a problem because even though I can work remotely, I've noticed the Pacific time zone is probably the best place to work remotely because you're within 2 to 3 hours of everyone else in the U.S. You're 2 hours ahead. My friends in New York are 3 hours ahead. Hawaii is 2 to 3 hours behind. So, but if I was in Hawaii and had to communicate with a client in New York, that's a 6-hour time.
Oh God, yeah.
But
yeah, and as you said, you could be in Hawaii and hypothetically fly back, and Washington State could say, okay, now you have a 14-day self-quarantine, you have to stay in. And so you could have all of these things too that you'd be dealing with. So
they're actually doing that in Hawaii right now. It's I've seen on the news, and my dad has confirmed it. It's right now, anyone, even if you already live there, anyone who flies into Hawaii has to do a mandatory 14-day quarantine.
Okay.
And Hawaii, funny enough, Hawaii is actually getting hit a lot harder than most other states right now because at least, something like Washington and Wisconsin, at least they're part of the continental U.S. So even if they can't fly stuff in, they can still ship things in from boats or trucks. But Hawaii, you can pretty much only fly things in or ship things in from the boats. In Hawaii, they've actually arrested a few people for breaking quarantine.
Wow.
And their supply lines are actually suffering a little bit because, the airlines are having problems right now.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like where I'm at, and we have a major rail line comes through town. So, you'll see that with 150 cars, behind it. And of course, the interstate, so the semis are coming in and out, and we have a major airport 40 miles away in Madison. So the ability to still, get things here is pretty easy, relatively speaking. But so Nick, if I'm correct, your university, the dorms have closed, right? They've told students you're out of the dorms, right?
Not real. They're still
What?
open.
Whoa.
Well, here's the thing. They're still open, but they're trying to limit how many people they need to look after. Like I have an email right here that I got basically a few days after they announced that they were closing down. So I'll just read a little excerpt. In an effort to increase social distancing, Governor Inslee placed statewide restrictions impacting Wazoo Pullman's ability to provide that full residential experience. And it basically, and the key takeaway, obviously, because they made it bold, is if you can stay at your permanent residence, please do so. Like the gist of this email is basically, it's like the dorms are open for people who can't go back to their original residence, or maybe international students who are going to have a lot of time going back to their country. But they're basically saying if you can stay out of Pullman and not have to use the dorms, please do so. Okay. But for those who do need to stay at the dorms, we'll do what we can.
Wow. And as far as like in-person classes, those have been shut down, right? Everything is virtual or some form of virtual, or you're watching, record it, but you're not going to anything on campus, correct?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's so we talked about this at the start of the show. You have some advice to offer to anybody that might be returning to a university setting, let's say in summer or fall. I think it's going to be fall. I don't think anybody's going to be doing in-person in the summer, but let's say fall, in-person starts again. People return to campus. And share that with me, share that with everybody. You said there's like one piece of technology that everybody should invest in right now if you haven't already.
Yeah, I'd say, now we're talking about, I'm talking about students here, but I really realize this applies to anybody who wants to, especially if you work mostly online, it's invest in a good router.
Yeah, invest in a router. I mean, it's and anybody, a router, it's a little box with like the 4 antennas off of it. Yeah. I think Nick's looking for one right now. So yeah, you can pick up a router, and if you absolutely,
this thing is the router right here,
right there. Yeah. So the router is what sends your Wi-Fi around your house, right? And a lot of these, and actually mine is up on the right-hand corner. It's kind of mounted up toward the wall. I updated mine in December, and I bought one. It wasn't quite a gaming one, but it was higher end. And as you said, Nick, I mean, why not go with a gaming router? Why not get as much capacity as you can? Spend the extra money, because if you need to get that bandwidth, and also, like for me, my kids are at home now, so they're doing virtual classes, and we're all using this. If I wouldn't have done this, our system would have really slowed down, right? Because we would have been overwhelmed, and now I'd be trying to compete for routers with everyone else trying to buy routers. I'd have to try to learn the router, and it's a couple $100, right? But what do you recommend for somebody who wants to buy a router? What should they look for?
Well, I'd say a lot of this is just going to come down to your budget, especially if right now, especially if you were working at like a restaurant and essentially lost your job. But the first thing is that if you have the budget for it, get a gaming router. Those things. Funny enough, I realized we miss out on a lot of people miss out on a lot of products because things are labeled as gaming. It's like, if you see the word gaming router, you might think, oh, I don't really play any video games or anything like that, so it won't make sense for me to get it. What people don't realize is that gaming routers gamers need a lot of bandwidth because they're like, they could be live streaming or they're playing these games that have these just insane graphics that take a lot of bandwidth to load. And so gaming routers are usually just top of the line routers, like the best types of routers money can buy. I don't have a gaming router because it was just a little bit outside my budget, but I have one that's like the next best thing. I think the router I'm using now is for like 5 people and it's just me using it.
Right.
But yeah, it's like a gaming router, or another example, a gaming chair. Like, yeah,
I love that chair, Nick.
Play video games. I'll find what the name of this.
Awesome.
I'll send you a link. But like, even if you don't play video games, like I don't really play video games, this chair would be really good if you have like lumbar support or just need a really comfortable chair because you have a job that's sitting around all day.
Or right now, people are spending more time, as students taking courses online, or if they're working from home, to invest in something like that. And this is something now that, to me, I mean, you've just pointed out the word gaming. When I did a search for my router, and I'm filtering through back in December, if I saw the word gaming, I was like, I'm not a gamer. But that's actually probably really uninformed marketing by the companies. Like maybe instead of gaming, it should be renamed, if they said this is a high performance multi-device router or something like that for for business, students and gamers, then I'd be like, oh yeah, like, okay, I'm going to check this out. I think they lost money from me simply because they market it and all of the images and stuff were just of gamers versus showing me the other capacity. I mean, is that your take? That I think this is really, I guess, maybe income. I know it's a big market, but yeah, well, I don't know.
I actually kind of disagree. Like, yeah,
Okay.
It is true that a lot of gaming products are just useful as whatever things like, gaming chairs. A lot of the times they're just really good top of the line chairs. Same deal with gaming laptops and gaming routers. But I don't think it's a mistake on the part of their marketing to focus on the gaming aspect. Because in marketing, you have to think about like who your target audience. And obviously their target audience is gamers. Gamers, even though there are other people that would want a chair like this, a lot of the times gamers who want to have who like to show off their setup, they are willing to spend just a ton of money,
right?
Like the best router or chair or laptop, more than the other people. So I don't think that they're missing out from that. I don't think they're missing out that much by emphasizing the gaming. I think it's more a mistake on the part of the consumer for not realizing that even if you're not a gamer, there are still you might want it anyway.
That's a good point. So yeah, like me, I upload a lot of video, and whether it be for the podcast, but also I teach at a university level, so I record like a corresponding lecture that goes with every week, and if I have a better router, obviously I can upload that faster, right? It's not going to take me an hour to upload something. It might take 20 minutes. So that's a good point. So those are the things you need to look at and make yourself familiar with what the terminology is, and also the coverage of like how many square feet. I know that was a big thing when I bought this, was the square footage of range without getting like a repeater or something, because the other one I had previously, I just kind of bought it off the shelf, maybe at Walmart, I don't know, 8 years ago. It still worked, but I didn't realize it was for a house that's about half the size of my house. So I was like, God, why does this suck? Like we're in the back room or, then I got like one bar, like what the hell's going on here? And it's just like, that was the capacity of that machine. I mean, that's all it could do. It was kind of, and technology, like, right. It's old technology. I mean, if you have a router that's 8 years old, that's pretty old stuff.
Yeah. And the other thing is, if you do want to invest in a router or just technology in general, now is a really good opportunity to look for it, or even if you buy used, because I almost wish that I waited till after this started to get my router, because the reason I don't use this router and have the router over there is because I co-host Bacon's show, the Laughter at Humanity show, and one of in the middle of the live stream, my router crapped out, and so we had Atham take over for the rest of the show.
Okay.
And then like I tried to realign this, and the little wire just popped out. I'm just like, oh, okay. So I had to spend some time. I just picked up a really good one from Walmart, but that was before stuff really started going down here. But right now, what I realized is you can get a lot of good deals on used technology right now because, a lot of people are out of work temporarily or permanently. They need money, and so they sell their old technology. And so you can save money just by the fact that it's used. But also, quick little economics lesson, what do you think happens to the price of something when the owner wants to sell it really quickly?
Right. They drop it, right? I mean, it gets, and you can even do or best offer and say, I'll give you, 20, 30% below what they thought was their basement, and they'll take it if it's cash.
Right.
So one of the things I've seen, and after this, then I'd like you to go in and give people an idea of where they can find technology that's used at a reasonable price. But my neighbor, we're having a talk the other day, and he goes, I was on Craigslist last night and just checking out like our area. And he's like, couches, $20, like a nice couch, fitness equipment, bikes, TV sets, computers, laptops. He said, it's all like basement. It's all flooded, like basement price, make an offer, people will take it. And I went in, and I'm like, oh my God, like this isn't like weightlifting equipment, here it is, $25, take it. One of the things I always watch is firewood, right? Because I burn firewood to heat the house, and the price of firewood just like plummeted. Gas is $1 a gallon. So to drive, a load of firewood out and drop it off, that price here was probably, $80 for quart of firewood, or I don't know, but it's down now easily to like $30-$40. People drop it off because they just want money. So tell me about your advice to people who want to upgrade their technology, because now is a good time. Get more efficient technology to use the bandwidth that's available out there that maybe has more RAM in it too. That so it just operates faster, even if the technology is or if everything gets throttled a little bit. But is it like Facebook groups? Is it Craigslist? How do you make sure you're not getting ripped off? That someone's not selling you a 10-year-old HP LCD laptop or something like that?
You can usually tell. Well, perfect example. I got this phone. It's my new phone. I got it off the Facebook Marketplace. So I looked there, and if you can look for someone in your local area, not only because it's less likely to be a scam, but also so you can get it quicker if you want to. As far as the technology you should upgrade, though, I'd say, especially if you're a student, or I guess most people, because most people are working from home, your first priority should be a router, because most of your devices are going to have to connect to the internet. And if you don't have a router that can do that, then it pretty much makes the rest of your technology pointless. So priority number one is a router. That's the only one I'd say.
Gotcha.
Just buy it new. Don't buy a used one unless you absolutely have to. But first priority is a router. Second one, and everything from here on out, you can buy used.
Okay.
Second priority would be a laptop, because that's probably where you're going to do most of your work. Then, I don't know, maybe a phone if you have money left over from the router and the laptop. But yeah, just your general technology setup. Just make sure you start with the router.
So yeah, okay. So, let's say a friend of yours is saying, yeah, okay, I heard this and I want to do this. I want to come back in fall and I want to have, upgraded technology and stuff like that. How does this actually work? Like, let's say you decide to buy a phone or laptop. Do you recommend, you meet up with somebody on that? Is it okay if they mail it to you, or, I guess what's that you demonstrate, or what if they send you the phone, and how do you set that up on your own network then? How does that work?
There's a few questions there. The first one is meet up if you can. The guy who sold me this phone, I met up with him. he was actually nice enough to come all the way down from Spokane, which is like a good hour and a half away. So I was grateful for that. But yeah, meet them in person if you can. It's also why you want to do it like local.
Right.
Let's see. Sorry, what was the second part of that question?
So let's see. Like if they're getting a phone, how do they connect that to their network? I mean, how does that become my, US Cellular or Verizon network? Because usually I just buy my phone from the phone place. Like I just go there and I get the phone, but, and I think, other people do that too. But so if you're buying a phone that's used, how do you set it up on a network?
Well, like your carrier?
Yeah.
Well, you really have two options. One is you make sure the phone is unlocked. That means it's no matter what SIM card you put in here, it'll work.
Okay.
Like I have AT&T. The other thing is that if it's not unlocked, just make sure that whoever's selling you the phone also uses AT&T. Like in this case, the guy I bought this from also uses AT&T. So I was just able to take my SIM card out of this. It's my old phone and put it in this one.
Oh, gotcha. So when did you buy that? When did you get that phone?
Like about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
It wasn't very long ago.
So was your take that the seller was selling it to get cash? I mean, was motivated to be like, I need money right now because things are shut down. So was that leverage that you had during that transaction?
Well, the price was already a little bit lower than the going rate that I've seen on the Facebook marketplace. Like this particular guy who sold me this particular phone, he didn't seem too bad. But when I was looking for used iPhone XR on Facebook Marketplace, I saw quite a few listings in just other parts, just in my local area and other parts of the world. That's like, yeah, I'm putting this at a lower price for a quick sale. Or the other one is OBO, which if you don't know means or best offer.
Right.
I saw a lot of those. But yeah, that's why a lot of people are selling off their old stuff right now, just because they need money quickly.
So if they're looking in marketplaces, I mean, again, somebody's like, where do I find these things? So it can be Facebook Market. What do you think about Craigslist? What do you think about eBay? Is there any plus or minus? Like also knowing from a marketing standpoint of I guess what's most reliable for places that people might go get the best deals. What would you recommend?
Your best bet is usually just to buy local if you can, because it's your local area. I don't buy a ton of used stuff, but so far Facebook Marketplace has been good for me. Just, do your due diligence. And if you feel like something's fishy, don't buy it and look somewhere else. But
right.
Yeah, places like Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, and I guess eBay, they would work. But if you can buy local, buy local.
Wow.
A must-read for parents, teachers, and taxpayers. Dr. David Perrodin has written the most honest book about the $3 billion school safety industrial complex. Attorney James Sibley proclaims, a brave demonstration of speaking truth to power. School of Errors rips the lid off the billion-dollar school safety industry. Using real-world examples of successful responses in desperate situations, David contrasts the expensive window dressings pitched to panic parents with the inexpensive and effective approaches proven to actually work. Read this book before you let your school waste another precious dollar on meaningless safety theater. Buy the international bestseller, School of Errors, Rethinking School Safety in America, now at Barnes & Noble or Amazon.
So what else? So you come back this fall. How is this?
Because I know my classes are shut down because the professors kept telling us it's at least until the end of the semester.
For in person, right? Is that what they're saying? Okay. So you come back this fall. What are some things you'd bring with you? What are some other, I guess, even situational awareness things that you keep an eye on to try to stay days ahead of what might be unfolding? I guess, again, you're a very perceptive person, situational awareness, as you said, you started to watch what was happening around you and had a lead into this of a few days. So how has this changed you? I mean, what are you going to be looking for? What are things you're going to bring with you? Or are you going to, stock some more, food, some battery packs? I mean, here's one thing. I'm going to get it out. So this is a battery pack. It's made by Anchor. So you've got a lot of those, right, Nick? You fly with them. I said this one.
Funny enough, you were telling that story on the live stream. Like you got stopped in TSA for that.
This is a bad idea because this thing looks just like a flattened stick of dynamite. So
even then, like technically, so does mine. The only difference is that mine is black and yours is red. And I've gone to and from a bunch of different places carrying two of these, and I've been completely fine.
But yeah, so I think though this is a really smart thing to have. Because let's say, you're on the move because of something, if you're in your car, you have a car charger, but let's say you did have to go to the hospital because of this, or there was, self-quarantine for some reason. Like they're saying, Nick, your apartment building, 4 people tested positive. So now we're going to, whatever. And I'm thinking this now is something, and I have 2 of these. I have one that's smaller and blue, but I take it with me when we go places, like even if we go out for a ride, because the small one it's has a little case and stuff like that, clamshell case. But yeah, if we needed to be somewhere, imagine like we're in a hospital waiting room or something like that. You're not going to have a chance to plug your phone, and you probably wouldn't have your phone cord with you. But if I have this, I can charge my phone, 7-8 times off of this. So basically these things cost maybe $30 to $40. There's different brands out there. And you plug it in, there's USB, you plug it in and it charges and it holds a charge, for probably several months. And then you can plug your phone cord in and kind of do a reverse where it'll just charge your phone. But I did this because of Disney. That was one of the things. We went to Disney 3 years ago and I had one of these similar made by a different company. And it was great, like because we'd be in the park, you're snapping a lot of pictures and stuff like that. And then suddenly it's like, the phone's starting to go down. So when we grab dinner or something like that, I would just charge the phone up and it worked well. But I think this is something I would recommend, maybe to university students, I guess maybe to everybody right now, because also what if your power, went out, and I don't know. I think this has kind of become one of my pandemic staples right now of having this, because if I needed to, especially get to a medical facility for, my family or something like that, I just don't anticipate I'd be able to recharge things unless I had access to my car. And I don't know how reliable that would be. And for like $30 or $40. And it not only that, it charges like a Chromebook, iPad, those types of things. But so that's like a behavior for me that's changed. Like that will always be charged, and I'll always have one ready to go if I need to, if I get a call or something happens. But how about you? I mean, what are some things that have fundamentally changed for the way that you would, you do things, the way that you shop, the way that you're perceiving situational awareness, your backup plans, more, I don't know, access to cash, funds, credit cards. I don't know. What do you think? How's it changed that for you, Nick?
I definitely have bought, when I go grocery shopping, I buy a lot more meat than I used to. But in fairness, that could just be because I'm trying to eat more like chicken and egg right now anyway.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, mostly just keeping things charged and pretty much just keeping an eye on what's happening. Because if I go to Dismores or Walmart or something one day and find out that the supply lines are getting thick, then it might be time to stock up or take inventory or start considering some things. I mean, it might sound a little bit reactive, but it's like, a lot of times it comes down to what happens in the moment anyway. Like you could you've talked about this in the book. You could have these flip charts or make these really specific plans of what you're going to do
Right.
if shit hits the fan, basically.
Absolutely.
But all it takes is for one thing to not go according to plan, and that plan pretty much goes out the window.
Yeah. I mean, here's an example too. So
It comes down to using your discretion, really.
we have our friend Rob Says out of Utah, one of the masculine geeks. So a couple of weeks ago, they had a 5.7 earthquake, and it was a mile from his house. So, his house got pretty disrupted and no structural damage, but that's in the middle of like everything else going on. So you're thinking about supply lines and relying on electricity during this shutdown of things because of coronavirus, and all of a sudden this compounds. And one thing I've learned too is, we can depend upon ourselves and our family, right? That's our locus of control. I have no control over someone that comes in and decides to buy everything that's on a shelf, even if they don't need it, which they don't, right? And that would disrupt that chain of supply chain. I have no control over some of those things. So I've got to be able to make in the moment decisions. So tell me, what else as a college student? So let's put you in this spot. So Nick, you're brought in. It's a orientation for students that are going to be starting in fall, and they're some are asking questions. They're like, "Hey, Mr. Schulaner, so the pandemic, coronavirus, things like that, like what should I do to be prepared in fall?" Like I listened and you talked about a router and other things, but what things should I bring, or even like what clothes should I pack, or what do I watch to try to like really stay ahead of stuff? Because by the time the university sends out an email to me, maybe like it's too late. Then if I'm trying to get boxes, flights out, whatever it is, I'm further down that process. There's people ahead of me. So and they're like, "Nick, that book School of Airs is pretty awesome." You'd be like, "Yeah, I know it is." And, hey, let's give a shout out, by the way, to our good friend Bacon Maldito. Bacon, how can people access his work? And you mentioned him before. What is it, Laughter to Humanity, or?
Yep. So his show is the Laughter at Humanity Show, which you can find at thegoddamnbacon.com. He writes articles about a bunch of different things like philosophy and nutrition. And he has his show that I think he releases every Wednesday or Thursday. And I usually co-host now. So if you want anything,
awesome,
you can go there. We also are live on Instagram on Sunday nights, although to be fair, it's like really late at night in the Pacific time, so not everyone can tune in live. But you can watch the recordings at thegoddamnbacon.com.
Yeah, and Bacon really, you're right, it's philosophy, and it's a really stabilizing, not only discussion of what happens, but then the blog posts it's not going to ramp you up. You're not going to feel anxious and all of this. It's a very clear-headed approach at a whole bunch of different things in life. And especially right now, the posts that have gone out in the last couple of weeks, I think are just really clear and settling to people, of saying, here's through all the fog, here's how to kind of ground yourself. So Bacon's, I feel he's always written like that, but I think some of his most timely work is right now when so many people are not in there. They're still out kind of in chaos. So yeah, our good friend Bacon Maldito. So yeah, let's come back to this. So here you are. It's Mr. Schulaner. Here's Mr. Schulaner, and they're like, he'll take questions, and the students are like, well, what should I do? Like, should I bring like, an extra sleeping bag? Should I bring this? Should I bring like AA batteries? Like, were those gone? Should I bring cash? Like, am I hiding cash, in an empty Coke can in my Coca-Cola can, I guess, in my fridge? What people are having these questions. People really are. They're like, how do I do the ATMs? Do you use it? Maybe they're going to be, how do I do this? Like, should I have 4 credit cards in case? So what do you do? Like, you're the guy, you're like, I've been there, and let me tell you about what I think.
I'd say don't get too specific. Like what you've mentioned multiple times in the book is like, we can't just narrowly focus on one thing that could happen. We need to basically be prepared, have a little bit of preparation. Yeah, for anything. there's some basics. One is bring a router. The other thing is have a little bit of canned food. You don't have to go all like, end of the world and clean out grocery store. But, just like a few cans of like, I don't know, soup or, something non-perishable that can last a while. I'd say that a lot of it is just the basic stuff you'd have to buy anyway. Just have a lot of basics, really.
One of the things...
Ideally, what I'd recommend is that most of the times in college, if you can, try to get an off-campus apartment. Because funny enough, what I realized is that my apartment is like at least, it only costs half as much as the cheapest dorms here.
Okay.
So I'm like, so you save more money that way.
Right. And as locus of control, right? Because, if you're staying in a dorm, the university system can dictate what happens in that situation as far as like, don't come back. Or I shared the story with you before. One of my friends, his son attends a university in California, one of the public universities. So they were told to take their things and leave campus, which they did. But he had a few things he needed to go back and get. So he drove like 3-4 hours back to the campus. And it was shut down. Like he couldn't get into the dorm, and he still had possessions like in his dorm room. And the university basically said, we've got everything closed. There'll be a point in time, we'll notify you, and then you can come up and come in and get the rest of your things. But yeah, I think that's a great suggestion too, if you can live off campus, because I believe that university housing is going to be really dicey for the fall, and the moment something sparks up, some cases of coronavirus in one area spark up, all the universities are going to shut down. Like they're not going to hesitate. As far as like university housing. So
especially once one school shuts down.
Schools
look at what other schools are doing and use that as the basis to justify what they're doing.
And if I have this correct, that's called social proof, right? You've talked about that term of.
Basically, social proof is basically you see other people. Like in my case, if you wanted to hire me, my testimonials would be social proof. You could see like, oh, he's done this before. This is what the people we work with have to say about it.
So what is it? What would be the term then for? So a university sees that another university has shut down, and then they're getting pressure probably of saying, well, they shut down to keep their students safe. Why aren't you shutting down to keep your students safe? What is there a term for that? That process of kind of saying, well, they did it, so they must, I don't know, care more. All of these things can be thrown out there.
Most marketers would probably just call that social proof.
Okay.
But in putting it as simply as I can, it's monkey see, monkey do.
Okay.
That's the simplest.
The old monkey see.
That's not even a marketing term. Not even a marketing term.
But I think that, I think everybody is going to be so ready to shut down. That it is, people will just be sitting there like on that proverbial light switch. Like they'll have it in their fingers, and they'll be like, what? They shut down? Boom, we're gone. Send the notice, 48 hours. We want people off campus. And if you are, again, off campus, and when I went to college, I lived off campus. And, I also I experienced the same things you did. It was cheaper. I had much more control over what was happening. We didn't have a resident assistant or anything like that. And I'm glad that I did that route, but I think right now it gives you a much better locus of control. Yes, like you're the owner of the rental property and things like that could have some stipulations or things that go down, but it wouldn't be nearly as restrictive as what the university is likely to do, or what they have to. I've read some stories that have been really, I don't know if horrific is the word, but where universities have just said, you've got 48 to 72 hours, get everything out of the dorm and get everything. You don't have to, wherever you go, maybe you go somewhere in the community, and we know you're a student from overseas or whatever, but they're like, everything, we're shutting the dorms down, we're locking the doors. And I've heard many of those stories, like authentically. And again, I think the locus of control. You want to put yourself in the best position you can to be able to make decisions that aren't influenced, especially by big agencies and organizations. So that's a really good point. And right now, as Nick, as you indicated, the demand for housing, and the ability to work out deals on rent and things like that should really be in the favor of the renter at this point. You should be in I would say, a very much advantaged position coming into fall, because, people who rent property are going to want that revenue, coming in. So
Although, I kind of wonder what it's going to be like in Pullman during the fall, because Pullman's a college town. At least half of its population are actually college students.
Right.
But people realize that a lot of these classes can be done remotely, then you don't have as much reason to actually move out to Pullman if you want to go to Wazoo. So I wonder what that's going to do for the apartments. Because I live in this, because they have a bunch of different apartments. We call it apartment land up here.
Okay.
So, if the amount of students who are attending remotely and don't need to actually be in Pullman, goes like this, I wonder what's going to happen to the housing in Pullman, because a lot of it is catered to students. Like, it's gotten to the point, during the summer when a lot of students go back, I stayed during the summer, and I've talked to a few local business owners in this area, and they said, yeah, summer is usually a pretty tough time. And by the end of summer, a lot of Pullman businesses aren't doing very well. So I'm actually very curious to see what happens there. One last thing I wanted to say on off-campus living, though, is I'm not a big fan of dorms. And one of the reasons is dorms really aren't designed to be like permanent long-term residences. Because, most dorms, the individual dorms are mostly just a bedroom, basically.
Yeah.
At least there's like a fridge somewhere down the hall.
Right.
A lot of this stuff is
bathroom down the hall.
Yeah. But, apartments, they are, for the most part, they are made to be like, permanent or long-term, like places you can live. Like, I have my apartment here. I got my fridge, not the little mini fridge that a lot of people have in their dorms, like a big fridge. I have a living room, and I have my own room here. It's more things that even if you weren't in college, you would still want. Like, if you weren't in college, nobody would want to live in a dorm.
Right. Right. I've got a college dorm story to share. So I was incorrect. I actually lived one semester in a dorm. It was back in the summer of 2000. This is an interesting story. I'll consolidate down, but it was UW Superior. So, northern part of Wisconsin, Superior, Duluth, Minnesota. I went back. I was getting my master's in education. I was a superintendent, principal, all of those type of roles. But this is when I was obtaining that. I already had a master's degree going back. So anyway, I went up, and that summer I stayed in a dorm because it just made sense. I mean, I lived 4 hours from there. So it was exactly what you said. It was a dorm, maybe built in the 1950s, and it was smaller than my studio down here. So maybe 12 feet by 7, 10 by 7. It's just a small place. And get this, a couple things is, one, they were renovating that dorm that semester to add to add internet. So they're drilling through the walls, and they're doing this like this low budget bid. So people, it's like, they're no protective gear, sparks are flying, stuff like this, dust everywhere. You'd come back from class, you'd shake out the sheet on your bed, just cement dust, my laptop covered in dust. It's a horrible. You got one antiquated bathroom. Yeah, you got to go down the hall. And it was, so anyway, this actually happened, Nick. So across there was the university center, and they've since torn it down and replaced it. But it was like 4 stories tall, and it was basically abandoned in summer. You go in there and you could eat and stuff like that. But on the 3rd floor, they had this big lounge, and I went in there and I actually made a fort. And so I'm like, what was this? So I'm like in my 20s. I made a fort out of furniture, like couches and stuff like that. And I slept over there in this fort. I honestly did this because they kept working in our building like all through the night. Like you just couldn't sleep. There was no downtime. Like they would work in the basement or in other areas, other floors, but everything vibrated through. Like, and I think they did this to get this project done. And I don't know, but it was horrific. So I slept in this fort, which was actually pretty cool. And then I came back. But the university, for internet, they had no internet, right? Because they're putting this in at this time. So I got Net Zero from Duluth. And if anybody remembers Net Zero, it was an early internet service that you could get for free. It was dial-up. And with Net Zero, they would have ads all around the outside of it. It's like the game Whammy or something like that. And every like 3 minutes, you had to click on an ad for like 20 seconds to keep your free internet. And I had that set up with Duluth. So it's pretty cool. But at the end of the semester at the university, the dean just came over and just leveled with us. Like there's maybe like 40 of us living in this dorm. And he's like, yeah, this is a horrible experience for everybody. We're not going to charge you anything. Like it's zero. But I remember, and oh my God, it was just, but you talk about, that was just a small area that you're living in, you're confined in. I had a small fridge and you're sharing a bathroom. And yeah, obviously, thinking ahead too. And what if that summer, there's something that comes out that, that's pandemic. I mean, you wouldn't want to be concentrated in that area, having to share bathrooms.
What if you're an internet and you might be stuck there? Because what if you're an international student that lives like, maybe you go to college in Wisconsin, but you're actually from like Japan or something, and it's going to be hard to get back. So you might not actually have a choice. Like if you end up stuck there, a dorm would really suck. An apartment's actually quite a bit better. Because like even if I am stuck here, at least there are a few rooms I could just walk around. It's not like I'd just be trapped in this one room.
Right. And the other part, too, you don't have a lot of things that you commonly have to share, again, like a bathroom or, I guess that would be probably the biggest one because that was the thing in the dorm, that you always had to go down, and they had the, rec areas and things like that where everybody was sharing. Now that we talk about it, I can't imagine how dorms returned to operating the way that they did, of putting, 500 people into these big, high rises like, UW-Madison and stuff like that, and sharing a lot of stuff. I'm sure they got to be meeting right now and figuring, how are we going to do this? Like, are we going to make so many rooms empty per floor just so we don't have a density of people? And oh man, I don't.
Or what are we going to, like, let's say only half the people who come back decide to stay in dorms. Maybe the other half, like this fall, continues learning remotely.
Right.
Because they realize, like, I'd like to think right now that, like, secretly they're having this meeting that's like, oh, crap. Now people are going to realize they can work and go to school remotely. So we can't justify all this funding to build all these new buildings. What are we going to do?
So Nick, this was our paper yesterday, and it says UW-Madison braces for $100 million hit. Okay. Yeah. And then also universities will not reimburse students for tuition and fees. So I'm like,
what?
That kind of sucks. This was, UW-Madison yesterday. And it was, and talk about not only like the impact of that, but there's irony because at the same time right now, so they're saying we're taking $100 million hit. We're not going to refund your tuition and fees. They're doing $100 million worth of construction on Camp Randall, the football stadium, and the Kohl Center to expand those out. So actually that's about a $130 million project. And those are going just fine. We're going to push out our 80,000 seat arena with all these luxury boxes. Don't worry that we have social distancing and we might not be able to sell tickets, and don't worry that it's $100 million while we're telling our students we're not going to give them tuition. So it's those hypocritical things. But hey, I wanted to get your take on this too. And as we kind of get toward the end, this is really good. So I saw in Washington, in the state of Washington, the city of Bellevue. Do you know where that is? Bellevue, Washington?
I do. It's closer to Seattle.
Okay.
I barely went to Seattle because I don't really like big cities. But yeah. I have an idea of where Seattle and Bellevue and all those places are.
Okay. So Bellevue created a website on their police page, and I did a 45-second, I edited a video of this. And I put it up on YouTube and I put it on Twitter, and I think it received several hundred views, like instantly. But anyway, they put this web page up, and it says you can report social distancing violations in gatherings, and so this is right on their police page. So you log in, or you go there, you click it, and then it goes down. And actually, if you're in my Twitter, like you could find it if you just go kind of back on things that I posted. But I edited down this 45-second clip. So I showed people, here's the My Portal, and then there's a Google map. So you can zoom in on a Google map to where the area is. So like if your neighbor is having a cookout and there's 8 people outside, you can drag that location over into the form, and then you write a description. And then, Nick, get this, you can upload photos. So you can take photos of this. But the thing of this, I've seen this, it's in my neighboring county does this, and it's starting to spread.
Oh, no.
I don't like this. Like, I don't like it because, one, I think people are following the rules for the most part, right? I think people are. I mean, people, for example, we don't tell people, hey, if someone is passing you on the interstate 5 miles over the speed limit, pull out your camera and take a picture of their license plate. Like, we've never done that. But so all of this, and I'm thinking, okay, somebody had to make this decision. We're going to take our tech team, and they're assigned to build this web page now while our city is trying to get essential services, notifications to people, if they have to vote remotely, if they have to do all of these things. But we're going to say, no, we're going to take, Karen and Bob, no, your job for the next 2 days is to build this web page to report the stuff. So I thought that was kind of garbage. And then the other part is, how do you justify sending out police to check this when the police are self-quarantining, depleted, and all of that, and saying, instead of protecting our hospital or responding if there's a car accident, we want you to go over there and check out Bacon's Barbecue because you've invited Atham and we think there's 7 people there. I mean, to me, it's completely insane. And it's like disrespectful to your law enforcement to say, this is what we value right now. I understand. I get it if someone has like 100 people at a party and they're totally doing something.
Yeah.
But
even then, it's like you're asking, I mean, for like big crimes, it makes sense. Like, if you suspect that if you think your next door neighbor has killed someone, okay. But for something like if they're going out and about and, that's bullshit, frankly.
It is. And I'll include it when I edit this. It is. And the other part is, Nick, I mean, photos, like anybody can deep fake a photo. Like you could Photoshop, something in, you could have a photo that you took before this took place and wipe out the metadata on it. I mean, that's the thing. Like, who's gonna look at this photo on the police side when everything else is going to hell and all of this with the virus and really strained systems right now, and say, oh yeah, that's authentic or it's not authentic. And what if it's also this one moment in time where somebody shows up at your house to drop off some supplies, and for 30 seconds there were 8 people in your driveway, but then after that they all dispersed. And does this give you permission to take a drone and get pictures? I saw YouTubers, somebody in Pennsylvania, one of my friends said, yeah, there's YouTubers in our area that are going out because they have pretty restrictive stuff in their counties. And the YouTubers are going out and they're doing live streams of trying to find people that they can report and bust. So, this one, I tuned in. Yeah, they were out. They're driving the car. Looks like there might be people over there. Let's take some pictures. So you're turning these people into this Stasi, this reporting of their neighbors. And I think it really is it's a horrible message to send. And also you're allocating these resources that should be going somewhere else. But
it reminds me of,
yeah,
I can't remember if it was you or this other thing I watched, but basically in like World War II Russia, a lot of people were really afraid to speak out against Stalin because there was like, I guess, a secret police. And so you don't know if the person that you say, I don't really approve of what this Stalin guy is doing. You have no idea if the person next to you is going to say, I actually agree with you on it. Or if he's going to say, well, actually, sir, I'm with the secret police and we're going to have to put you under arrest. So
no. You're right.
It's like you have no idea if like your next door neighbor is going to see you like going outside, like maybe going for a run or something, and just won't care, or if he will actually report you for doing that.
No, you're right. And it can be also, if you've gone out multiple times during the day. So they're like, okay, you can go out for fitness or you can go out to get something, but this is the fourth time you've been out, and someone could just say, I've got it on my Ring camera on my house across the road, and I've seen this person leave 4 times. And like, you are presumed guilty, right? You have to justify this. If you get a visit by the police, you could get a fine. The other thing I've told people is these are all called like above the line fines. So it's not like a parking ticket. Like, these things are basically impossible to get rid of. But if somebody said that, they say, we have this picture, we have notification, there were 8 people at your house in your yard and they weren't social distancing. There's not much you could do. And this is, so I don't know, again, if you've seen this or if you're starting to see this, but Bellevue, Washington is one of the sites, but I've found so many. I mean, people will just email me and say, look at our webpage. And again, it's put in the location or drag it from the map, do a description, and then include photos. I talked to a lawyer, Nick, and he was saying, once you submit a photo to a .gov website, Freedom of Information Act request, you can probably get that photo like down the road. So, like, you could put in a request and find the photos that were submitted by people. And that seems like a huge privacy thing. What if this becomes like shaming? What if some police in Britain, they actually take these photos and they post them online, and they'll say, this person was out for a non-essential reason. This person was out. And then their family's like, what the hell are you doing? Like, you're online, like you're related to us. And how long does it take before employers see this, or even like schools see this? They're like, Nick, come on, man. You just made the webpage here in our city because you're put in for this social distancing thing because you're like walking past and someone snapped a picture as you walk past 6 other people. So now there's 7 people in the frame. Man.
Like, some states in the U.S. have like electronic surveillance laws where it's like illegal to record someone unless they're aware and consent to it.
Right.
Now, it's obviously not a problem in states that don't have those laws, but in states that do have those laws, like California, and I think Washington too, how is that law going to factor in? Are we just going to ignore it for something like this? Or?
I mean, right, because wouldn't it seem that, you would have had some consultation with your legal team and how did this process actually happen? Because you just don't spring up a website where you can drag this Google map and have this information processed like in 10 minutes. Like, I'm looking at this and saying there had to be some time put into this whole process. But and that's a good point, because where do the laws right now kind of end and where do they start? Because I think the Stafford Act makes that real nebulous. Like, for example, if people in my state are you can't be evicted right now. And rental owner, and I have a relative that owns property. They said, we couldn't evict anybody right now. And then actually in some counties, they're saying if a rental owner comes in and says, this person didn't pay my rent and I'm going to take them to small claims court, they would just throw that out. Like, they'd be like, no, we got other things that we're dealing with right now. So where does this whole civil liberties? And so, I mean, it's just kind of a good discussion.
Thank you for tuning in to the Safety Doc Podcast with the nation's leading safety expert, Dr. David Perrodin, author, radio show host, university instructor, researcher, expert witness, and consultant. Powerful testimonials. Dr. Perrodin has a strong reputation as the go-to safety consultant, and he was still able to exceed our expectations. When we went looking for an expert in the field of crisis preparedness and prevention, David was the single person we pursued. Not easy stepping into the touchier subjects of life, but Dr. David pulls it off. Take a listen. Now, back to Dr. David Perrodin and the Safety Doc Podcast.
I've been getting a lot of information how school safety is going to change because of the coronavirus. And I knew it would happen, right, Nick? I knew this would change, and it's out there. Companies 3D printing new door handles. So all you have to do is come up with a pen and press a button, and then it would open up the door, which like doesn't comply with ADA or all this other stuff, but that's kind of all out the table. Like people just want to be safe, customer perceived values. So they're like, we can 3D print this overlay thing and you press it. And then also antimicrobial films and sprays everywhere. My God, I've seen that like in the last 72 hours. Like that has just become, you can put this laminate on, this clear laminate over like the parts of doors that people press or desk, and it's antimicrobial, but every 30 days you have to peel it off and replace it. So we'll send you like a year supply. So marketing has totally changed in school safety. It used to be barricades, bollards, things like that. Even a month ago, come this fall, it is going to be all this antimicrobial stuff, hand washing stations, maybe UV light stuff that kids, put their hands under to kill the germ. Who the hell knows? I mean, it's all going to be like this. But yeah, I guess I don't know exactly where I was going with that. Let's see. Oh, from an engineering standpoint, how do you think things are going to change? Maybe just in universal design, whether it be buildings, more open spaces, keeping people apart. What do you see of early stages of engineering because of this pandemic? Things that might change. That right now engineers are going to have to start thinking about, whether it be mass transit, whether it be whatever. Put your crystal ball out there and just say, as someone who's pursuing a degree in engineering, I think this is a game changer in these areas.
Well, I'm studying mechanical engineering, and I can't really. The only thing I might see in like the mechanical side, which you could argue this is civil, is that the design of buildings are going to change. They're going to be more stripped down because people are going to realize, wait, we can do all this remotely. Why do we need to spend so much on these giant, luxurious looking buildings?
Right.
Little bit of a tangent, but funny story. So a lot of my classes are in the engineering building, and you'd expect, this is like engineering and I think a bit of computer science, you'd expect that to be like the most technologically advanced building on campus.
Right.
No, it is the oldest and most crummy looking building on campus.
And it's got like one outlet, and then it's got like a thing plugged into it that has like 6 more outlets, and then a thing that has 6 plugs. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I got it. Like
old and run down. Meanwhile, I think the newest and best looking building on campus is one like the rec center.
Right. Which the students want.
Maybe not the College of Communications.
Okay.
But I'm just like, really?
No, it's great. I mean, there's so much irony in that, right? Like there's just so much crazy irony, but yeah.
But I do see on the software side of things, especially because I'd like to think that this phenomenon of remote work and remote learning is going to become more prevalent because people are going to wonder, why it took us a little while to get used to it. But, once we did, we could save a lot of money on like office space. So on the software or maybe the computer engineering side, the bandwidth is going to have to decrease.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Yeah. Bandwidth.
On YouTube or using Zoom. Maybe that might cascade into battery life because a lot of people are going to be using their phones for like Zoom or live streaming or whatever, which as we all know, it eats up your battery like really quickly if you do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, that's a great point. So right there, I mean, battery technology, long life batteries, easier to recharge, anything that has to do with bandwidth. And then, yeah, I mean, as you said, I mean, if you're building a new public facility right now, let's say it's a dorm university building, city hall, office, whatever, you're going to look at this and say, how much of this can be done remotely? Like what we're putting in for these different, offices. And then also like, what's our density of people? Like I just can't see new construction having these highly populated office areas, like just the cubicle type thing, because we've seen those cubicle farms. The cubicle goes up like 5 feet or whatever. I mean, somebody coughs or somebody's sick, that whole area is like done. But
right. Or open planned offices. I know a lot of marketing agencies have those where it's like just a giant table, and it's not exactly a cubicle, but everybody has like their own little section of the desk. I'm not a big fan of those types of offices, but it would suck to be a construction company that like specializes in those right now.
And the other part too, right? Like, how you do your wall coverings. I mean, you want things you're probably going to be able to wipe down. You're not going to want fabrics, and you're not going to want, stuff that you can't spray down. So all of these things are going to have to be considerations, like in any, and then also retrofitting. And I'm trying to wrap my mind around these arenas, like all of these. Like here in Milwaukee, well, I'm not in Milwaukee, but I'm close to Milwaukee, the Pfizer Forum where the Bucks play. I mean, that opened 2 years ago. So how do you, 18,000 people in a small area that's enclosed. How do you do that again? How do you build the new arena? How do you build the arena that opens in 2025 that has more space, or that it's engineered that it has antimicrobial or viral stuff? So after every event, there's some process with UV light that's cost effective or whatever, and these surfaces already make it difficult for things to live in. I mean, all of this stuff has to be re-engineered, right? You go into the bathroom, as we know, like the hands-free for the towel, the paper towel coming out, like all that shit's got to like become standard, like everywhere, right? I mean,
what do you think that's going to do to like ticket prices, or maybe not ticket prices, but concession prices? Like if you want to get like nachos or...
Yeah, you're probably going to, right, because you're going to have, you're not going to have a deep line. You're going to have, barriers probably put up, because right now, the early stuff I've seen is like they put, at Walmart, for example, my Walmart, they put blue squares on the floor. They say, stand here, next person stand here, next, if you're checking out or something like that. Yeah, if you get it at line at an arena...
Oh,
I mean, you're right. So this whole mechanical and because you said you're mechanical engineering, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but mechanical would also be how maybe like what? So lights turn on, how all of these things.
Yeah, and we have to. It's like, well, I guess a lot of like the cleaning stuff would probably be chemical, because you got to figure out what chemicals would be cost effective to use to clean. But the mechanical things, it's like, how are we gonna? Maybe it's like when no one's around, these giant jets come down from the center of the stadium and spread it. How do we design that?
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right on.
It would be a nightmare for, I'd imagine, civil engineers most of all. Suppose that after this blows over, even after it blows over and we can go out again, people just don't see the point in like going, large groups of people for no reason. So imagine ticket sales, like actual ticket sales to see the game in person, go like this, along as all the other events that the stadium can do. It's like, what is the city or whoever gonna do with that giant building, which probably still has a lot of upkeep and now like has a severely limited capacity to pay for its cost with the events it hosts.
Right. And Nick, this is a great point. And it's the same thing with schools, right? Like, these massive referendums to build these huge, not only K-12, but K-16 schools. A lot of times, and let's say what you just said, these big arenas, cities give them tax breaks. So like in Milwaukee, they're like, you don't have to pay taxes for 15 or 20 years to bring this here because it'll have this economic, boom. And the city then, pays for the water and sewer and sidewalks around it. And all of a sudden, now, like, yeah, they're saying, we're not going to have the people. Like, we're probably not going to pay you back. And in 20 years, I mean, this building is probably going to be outdated, because engineering is going to have to go so much forward to try to retrofit this into something that would be a pandemic acceptable facility to interface with. Would just be too much. We're going to have to retrofit. So yeah, as you indicated, what in the hell are these places going to do? You talked about universities. So University of Wisconsin-Madison is close by, 40 minutes away. very dense, like super dense, 40,000 students. And, realistically this fall, I would say 10 to 15,000 students won't come back to campus. They'll stay off of campus. That's a huge moneymaker. I mean, the dorms, Camp Randall, 80,000 seats, the Cole Center, 17,000 seats. These are always sold out for conference or concerts, events, basketball, all these things. That's shut down.
A lot of people can just buy like a subscription to ESPN and just watch the game that way. So I'd imagine those are probably going to spike too.
Yeah, you're right. So
once the sports start, actually happening again.
So maybe now's a great time to get your big screen, TV, watch for those on sale and get something like that, because
those on the Facebook marketplace.
But
the thing that I've noticed, it happens. This is what not just big buildings, but big things in general are really susceptible to. It's like once things start shutting down and stores start leaving, it's a pretty serious domino effect. Like, to give you an idea, so I spent Christmas in the Midwest in Ohio, and my aunt and uncle, they took me to this one really old mall, like this store in the mall.
Okay.
And it's this giant shopping mall. Just think about giant shopping mall. You pretty much have it. Only 2 stores in that entire mall are open.
Wow.
And according to my aunt, that is the way it's been since 2008.
Wow.
2 stores it's in there, but every other store in that entire mall is shut down.
So Nick, like where I'm at, in Madison, they have 2 large malls, and both have been completely closed for 3 weeks. I mean, completely closed because of a decree from the governor. So as you just indicated, like if and when those open up, are they going to be half capacity? Are people going to go there? And also, like, the college students who worked a lot of these places, who are the workforce, they're probably not going to be back, or there's going to be more competition. But yeah, think about, oh my God, like the food courts. I mean, those things were kind of disgusting in the first place, like, right? But how in the hell do you pull that off? How do you pull that off under this new normal? So, but I think, as you indicated, like, again, you're very level, you're analytical, you think through this, and you see these big picture things. And especially as an engineer, as a marketer, you can see how these things are going to start to unfold. You can see that when you have discussions, you're going to have to say, okay, but when we build this, how are we going to accommodate for, these new cleaning, sanitizing type technologies, which will just be innate to structures? How are we going to do this?
Are we going to pay for them is more important. We're probably going to pass that off to the people who buy the tickets. And they're probably tight on cash if they worked at like a restaurant or one of those non-essential jobs. So they have less money, and the tickets got more expensive because they had to pay it back. So it's just going to create a domino effect.
It's I mean, that type of stuff. I can't get this image out of my mind that you just talked about before. I'm imagining myself like inside the Pfizer forum, and then when it's all done, that this thing lowers down, and then suddenly, it's like this misting ionized spray that covers like everything, and it takes like 2 hours for it to dry. And I mean, but that, and maybe every time you apply that, that's like $10,000 every time, to get this mixture and this process. And maybe, too, it's going to be insurance companies, right, are going to say, if they insure this place, you've got to do this, like, for liability. Before you have people come in, you have to do this. So that's the whole other part of this that I think will start to come out too, is like what your insurance carries. Like I've watched schools do lunches. So, kids are now at home, so the schools are going out into certain places and handing lunches to parents and for the kids. But the part of that I'm looking at doesn't make sense is there's a lot of contact with that. Like, they have gloves on, the school staff, and then they're handing it into somebody's car. Next car comes, they do the same thing, but they're not changing gloves, and they're interacting with these cars without any like mask or stuff. So, like, what if somebody comes through that is COVID positive, and you're reaching in their car after they've been coughing for 10 minutes as they've been idling there, and now you have interacted and handed a bag to 40 other people? I mean, that whole process is going to change once we get legal in, but But yeah, I love this idea, and I'd like to come back to it at some point as you think more about how the impact will be on not only new construction of everything from a house, even to house HVAC system, right? How do you do an HVAC system in a dorm? How do you do your filtering? Are you adding UV stuff to this? Are you adding new filters that have a higher MERV rating that you have to change out?
What's that going to do to
what?
the rent for the dorms and the tuition for school in general?
I mean, there's probably going to be like a search. You're probably going to see it explicit where it'll be tuition, fees, and, like health maintenance or health expense or something. And they'll just put it as a line item, maybe so they can get some federal reimbursement or whoever. But I also think the universities are going to constrict by 20 to 30%. Like I'd be surprised in Wisconsin if we didn't have 3 or 4 major universities close, like La Crosse, Stevens Point, Platteville, Oshkosh, River Falls, that are all like 4-year universities that maybe have 5,000 to 7,000. I just can't see that they're going to be able to sustain this. Who's going to pay taxes? How are they going to get their money?
Like even if the university closes, that doesn't mean the building gets demolished. Like you've probably seen it. Like I remember I worked at a Taco Bell. There was this giant space right across the street that used to be a Walgreens, and it had been vacant for like 10 years before they finally tore it down and built something else. And so for a while, you're going to have, like, let's say Wazoo closes down. Unless you can find someone who can actually use all that space, until you find that, for however long that takes, you're just going to have this giant campus that doesn't have an owner, so is going to fall into disrepair.
Yeah.
So the same thing with you've probably seen it. It's like, they have these big things like malls that, the companies move out, but the building is still there, and it just stays like that.
Right.
It's like, well, how many companies need 20,000 square feet? Like, that's why. Like, I had this mall in Federal Way called the Commons. Once the Sears closed down, this was like 2 or 3 years ago, they still haven't found any real use for it because it was just a big space, and very few companies actually need that much. And the ones that do have already built it, like Walmart.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, if you're an urban explorer, I started to do more of that. My God, like everything's going to be open to you because you're just going to have a ton more places. But yeah, so how do you mothball this? How do you kind of keep a bare staff to keep these things up? And my God, I mean, once you go a couple of years on some of these buildings, some of these major university buildings without regular maintenance, it's gonna be. I mean, the amount of money to try to restart those is going to be through the roof. So yeah, what do you do, right? You have all of this space that's going to shut down. It's just not going to be practical anymore. And it's not like you can just mothball it and bring it back into service. But wow. So in closing here, Nick, this has been incredible. I mean, we've gone into to philosophy, to some real practical things of how design goes. And I'm with you on virtual learning too. Is I completely believe that this will be the primary mode of instruction, at least for the near future. But once it grabs hold, we get greater bandwidth. People get more proficient with different things. Zoom, for example, whatever. I just don't see in-person coming back because, again, if you're a K-12 district, if you're a university, all these university presidents, superintendents, school boards, they're going to be like, what if we get another wave of the pandemic? Like we've all experienced this now. Everybody, all of us, no one's been spared from the curfews, the shutdowns, the closings. We all know what it's like, and people are just not going to take that risk. And again, like my kids go to school, like for my daughter's elementary school. So I don't know, 400 kids in a building, made for maybe 400. So you can't have a classroom where you have 25 kids in it. It would be too dense. It wouldn't make sense, like from a standpoint. So do you come up with a schedule in fall saying we're going to have kids come, one group of kids will come Monday and Wednesday, another group will come Tuesday and Thursday, and Friday will be a virtual day because we're going to lower the density of kids. But then what does that look like? Does that even make sense to do that? Because you still have the same concentration in areas like a lunchroom and bathroom. And so, I mean, some of these things
And the
people
buses. Don't
bus.
forget-
Oh my God, Nick, you're right. I mean, how do you pull that off, right? How do you look at a bus, which is just built for economy, right? Of what, 40 to 50 kids and one kid is sick on the bus, everybody's wiped out. And then if that bus is used after school for any other activities or if there's any athletics, it still is happening. And everybody will say, yeah, we have these modes to sanitize. But I mean, come on, we all know like that will only go so far. In the moment somebody else sneezes or whatever, you're pretty much screwed.
Until something else happens that makes us want to change stuff up again. It's like, it's like after 9/11, we did all this airport security stuff. And
Right.
we haven't had any serious airports attacks since then. But, we've never, moved on, if that makes sense.
No, you're right. I noticed that too because, we were packing to go to Orlando on March 16th. So, I'm following all of the regulations and what you can have 3 milliliters of stuff and whatever. But yeah, this is, so I think some takeaways as we wrap this up, some takeaways. One is, you exercise situational awareness, which I wrote about in School of Airs, but it's something everyone can take advantage of. Just watch what's happening around you, watch the news, call people, be in contact. And so you were very aware a few days ahead that something might be going on significantly that would impact you in your campus. The other part is thinking ahead of what you can do right now to prepare yourself if this goes on for a longer time, or even if things return in fall and suddenly we go into another lock or stay at home closure, stuff like that. Invest in a great router, invest in a router, a robust router that you're capable with your budget to do, and those prices will be down. Try to buy it new if you can. The other thing is, upgrade your technology now, because a lot of people are dumping technology for money. I mean, really good stuff they're getting rid of just because they need the cash. So take advantage of that now. And I think another part of this, your locus of control, as you indicated, you live off campus. Be very cognizant of who's in charge of decisions that impact your life. And the fourth is just start thinking down the road, anticipate, what might be opportunities. If you're online marketing, if you're selling stuff that you can sell online, whether that be goods, whether that be services, training, webinars, how to do things, if you can do that, now's a great time because ad prices are down. If you're a brick and mortar place, like a hair salon or something like that, which has been closed by the state and you've had to shut down your ads, this is a time for people who have, can do stuff remotely and do stuff online. Consider ads. As you indicated, you've had some clients with return of investment, which has really gone through the roof for them right now, and ads are very affordable. So let's talk about, again, how people can access you, how they can get information about, they want to learn more about ads. Maybe they've had some side business they've been doing, and that business can continue because it's through the mail or it's through virtual that they're doing. How can they get a hold of you, learn more about marketing, and maybe how they can really expand how they're supporting themselves and their business right now?
All right. So to learn about all of that, you can go to my YouTube channel, which is just my name, or you can go to nickschulaner.com. That's where you can get in touch with me with any questions you have about marketing, or maybe you want to hire me to do your marketing. But yeah, that's where you can find me. Okay,
great. And just closing here on my side. So yeah, safetyphd.com. And if you're watching this, that'll be down below. And then also I'll have Nick's, website down below. So if you're listening to this, all of the shows, the Safety Doc podcast, this is episode 127. All of the shows come out in video, audio, and then there's a corresponding blog post. You can go to safetyphd.com and find all of those, or on my YouTube channel, please subscribe. And I've experienced a substantial increase in subscribers just in the last month. So maybe as people are home more, they're learning about the channel. But my book, School of Airs, Rethinking School Safety in America, this is hard copy. It also is in Kindle format. But the first chapter is how thinking about a bagel can get you through the worst day of your life. I have a chapter on transitioning into chaos. A lot of information that kind of pertains, it pertains right now to when things have substantially changed in a short amount of time for people, of how to negotiate that and navigate that. So you're making the right decisions, you're doing face validity, member checks, getting information that's valid, staying in control of your life, planning ahead during kind of chaotic times. So it's really good. I have a few chapters in there devoted to 9/11, worked with the City of New York Planning Commission to develop those. Any words you want to give a shout out to people or anything, or another shout out to our good friend Bacon Maldito? Bacon Maldito, any shout outs here, how people can find Bacon again, or just like words of wisdom from Nick?
Yeah, I'd say if you're just looking for another show to watch in addition to the Safety Doc podcast, go to thegoddamnbacon.com. You'll see the Laughter at Humanity show, where we pretty much make fun of all the people who are just panicking and pretty much doing all the stuff you shouldn't do at a time like this. So again, you go to thegoddamnbacon.com. I'm usually the co-host on the show, so you can see me there too.
This has been the Safety Doc Podcast with author, radio show host, and leading safety expert, Dr. David Perrodin. Remember to check back each week for the latest, best, and most bizarre practices in safety preparation and crisis response. You can find Dr. Perrodin on Twitter at SafetyPhD. And remember, the truth will keep you safe.